The night before my wedding, my wife's bridesmaid accidentally added me to their group chat, where my wife-to-be wrote, "Don't worry, I'll still sneak away with my ex-boyfriend before the honeymoon." They all laughed. I just read in silence. The next morning, she found out why no groom showed up. The notification sound was soft, almost apologetic in its intrusion. It was 11:47 p.m., and I was lying in the guest room of what would soon be our shared home, staring at the ceiling with that peculiar mixture of excitement and terror that visits every groom the night before his wedding. The room smelled faintly of fresh paint and new carpet, that optimistic scent of beginnings. Outside, February rain tapped against the window like impatient fingers, and I remember thinking how the weather report had promised clear skies for tomorrow. For our day? My phone lit up on the nightstand, and I reached for it without thinking. "You've been added to Ring Claire's last ride ring." I stared at the screen, confused. The group chat name was odd. Playful, maybe. The kind of inside joke that bridal parties love. I assumed someone had created a last-minute coordination group for tomorrow's logistics. Photographer timings. Bouquet deliveries. The 1,000 small fires that need putting out before a wedding. I almost muted it and went back to contemplating the ceiling. Almost. Then the messages started coming. Jessica. OMG, who added Marcus? Amanda. Shit, removing him now. Jessica. Wait, don't remove him yet. It'll notify him twice. Amanda. Fuck, what do we do? My heart started beating faster. Not with alarm yet. Just curiosity sharpening into something else. Something that felt like standing at the edge of a cliff you didn't know was there. Jessica. Just act normal. He probably didn't see yet. But I had seen. I was seeing everything. Claire, guys, relax. He's probably asleep. Just remove him in the morning and say it was a glitch. Claire. My fiancé of 3 years, my partner of 5. The woman whose dress was hanging in our closet right now, wrapped in layers of protective plastic like something sacred. The woman I'd spent the last 6 months planning a future with, down to the color of the napkins and the exact wording of our vows. I sat up slowly, my back against the headboard. The rain outside seemed louder now. Amanda. Okay, but Claire, you can't be texting about you-know-what in here anymore. Claire, why? Marcus never checks his phone at night. He's probably already dreaming about spreadsheets, or whatever. They laughed. Little emoji reactions bloomed under her message like digital wildflowers. Laughing faces. Crying laughing faces. Skulls. I wasn't laughing. I wasn't dreaming about spreadsheets either. Jessica, still though. Tomorrow's the big day. You sure you want to go through with the side plan? Claire, babe. I've told you 100 times. Marcus is perfect. He's stable, he's got that nice finance job. He'll be an amazing dad someday. But Derek is fun. Derek is alive. Why should I have to choose? I read that message 3 times. Then 4. Then I stopped counting. Amanda, you're terrible, LMYOLO. Claire, don't worry. I'll still sneak away with my ex-boyfriend before the honeymoon. Marcus will never know. He's too busy color-coding our retirement accounts faced with tears of joy. Jessica, Claire, Amanda, OMG, you're actually going to do it. Claire, already planned. Derek's flying in tomorrow afternoon. We're meeting at the Ashford Hotel at 4. I told Marcus I need bride time before the rehearsal dinner. He literally said, of course, honey, take all the time you need. Like, too easy. Jessica, you're going to hell. Claire, probably. But I'll have fun getting their fire. More laughter. More skulls. More little digital affirmations that what I was reading was real, was happening, was something my fiancé had planned with the casual efficiency she usually reserved for vacation itineraries and grocery lists. I want to tell you that I threw my phone across the room, that I screamed, or cried, or punched a hole in the wall. But I didn't. I just sat there in that guest room that smelled like new beginnings, watching the messages continue to roll in, watching my entire future rewrite itself in real time, one glowing line at a time. And I read in silence. Claire, besides, after we're married, things will settle down. I'll probably get bored of Derek eventually. This is just getting it out of my system. Marcus gets forever. Derek gets tomorrow. Everyone wins. Amanda, girl, you are wild. Jessica, just don't get caught. Claire, please. Marcus wouldn't suspect me if I tattooed Derek's name on my forehead. He worships me. It's actually kind of pathetic. The rain kept falling. The messages kept coming. And somewhere in that guest room, In that moment between 11:47 p.m. and whatever came after, Marcus Chun, finance analyst, color coding enthusiast, devoted fiancé, apparent worshiper, began to disappear. Someone else was taking his place. Someone quieter. Someone who understood that the most dangerous thing in the world isn't anger. It's clarity. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I did what I do best. I built a spreadsheet. Column A, timeline of events. Column B, logistical considerations. Column C, necessary actions. Column D, emotional variables. Column E, acceptable outcomes. The rain had stopped by 2 a.m., leaving the world outside scrubbed clean and darker somehow. I sat at the small desk in the guest room, my laptop screen the only light, and I worked. Not with anger. Anger is hot and messy and makes mistakes. I worked with something colder, something more surgical. If you've ever had your heart broken, you know that there's a moment right after the initial shock where everything becomes hyper-real. Colors are sharper. Sounds are clearer. Your brain kicks into a kind of emergency mode where suddenly you can see patterns you missed before, connections you were too close to notice. It's like someone turned on floodlights in a room you thought you knew in the dark. I was in that room now, and the lights were blinding. I opened my phone and scrolled back through months of texts with Claire. Innocuous conversations that suddenly weren't innocuous at all. That weekend in March when she'd gone to visit her college roommate. Had that been Derek? That Tuesday evening when she'd come home 2 hours late, makeup slightly smudged, claiming happy hour had run long. Derek? The phone call she'd sometimes take in another room, her voice dropping to a murmur I'd assumed was just about bridesmaid drama or mother of the bride stress. Derek, Derek, Derek? The name hammered in my skull like a drumbeat. Derek Castellano. I even remembered him from the stories Claire used to tell when we first started dating. Her college boyfriend. The charming one. The irresponsible one. The one who'd broken her heart by choosing a band tour over grad school and stability. The one she'd supposedly gotten over years ago. He taught me what I don't want in a partner, she told me once, curled up on my couch after our third date, her head on my shoulder. You're everything he wasn't, Marcus. You're real. I'd felt proud of that. Validated. Like I'd won some kind of competition I didn't know I was in. Now I understood. I hadn't won anything. I'd just been cast in a different role. Stable Marcus. Reliable Marcus. The understudy who gets to perform in the daily matinees while the real star saves himself for opening night. My phone buzzed. Another message in the group chat. Amanda. Claire, you still up? Claire, yeah. Can't sleep. Wedding jitters LOL. Amanda. Or Derek jitters smirking face. Claire. OMG stop. But yes. Also those. I can't believe it's actually happening tomorrow. Everything. Jessica. Just don't leave any evidence. No texts. No photos. Nothing Marcus could find. Claire. Babe, I'm not an idiot. This isn't my first rodeo. Remember when I saw Jake on the side for 3 months and Marcus never suspected a thing? The message sat there on my screen like a bomb that had already detonated but hadn't made a sound yet. Jake. There had been a Jake too. I scrolled through my calendar, back 8 months to the summer when Claire had suddenly gotten really into yoga and was going to classes 4 times a week. Jake, apparently. Jake of the 3-month affair I'd never suspected while I'd been proud of her dedication to wellness. While I'd bought her a new yoga mat for her birthday, and she'd kissed me and called me thoughtful. You always know exactly what I need, she'd said. I closed my laptop very gently. If I'd slammed it, something might have broken, and I needed everything intact. I needed my hands steady and my mind clearer than it had ever been. The apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Claire was at her parents' house tonight. Tradition dictated we spend our last unmarried night apart. She'd kissed me goodbye yesterday evening, her hand lingering on my cheek. Tomorrow, you're stuck with me forever, she'd whispered, her eyes bright with something I'd interpreted as love but now recognized as something else entirely. Triumph, maybe. The satisfaction of a plan coming together. I picked up my phone again and opened a new note. Not in the cloud. Not backed up anywhere. Just local storage. Just for me. Things I know. 1. Claire has been cheating on me with at least 2 other men, Derek Castellano and someone named Jake. 2. She plans to meet Derek tomorrow at the Ashford Hotel at 4 p.m. 3. She views me as stable, predictable, and pathetic. 4. She views our marriage as security she can maintain while pursuing excitement elsewhere. 5. Her bridesmaids not only know, they enable and encourage this. 6. She has no intention of stopping after marriage. 7. She believes I worship her and would never suspect her. 8. She is correct that I worshipped her. 9. She is incorrect about what happens next. I stared at point 9 for a long time. Then I added a 10th point. 10. She accidentally gave me the one thing she should never have given me, the truth. The sky outside was starting to lighten, that deep blue that comes before dawn, when the world is holding its breath between darkness and light. In a few hours, people would start waking up. Caterers would load their vans. Florists would assemble bouquets. A makeup artist would arrive at Claire's parents' house to make her beautiful for our wedding. Our wedding that was scheduled for 3 p.m. at Meridian Gardens. Our wedding where I was supposed to stand at the altar at 2:55 p.m., waiting for her to walk down the aisle in that dress we'd chosen together, the one she'd cried in when she first put it on, saying she'd never felt more beautiful, never felt more sure. Our wedding that, somewhere around 4 p.m., according to the group chat's revelations, would be briefly interrupted by my new wife's absence as she needed a moment, or had to take an important call, or whatever excuse she'd planned. While I stood there making small talk with guests, she'd be at the Ashford Hotel, 12 minutes away. I'd timed it on Google Maps. Derek would already be there, probably, in a room he'd booked under his name. He'd have champagne, maybe, or whiskey. Claire mentioned once that Derek drank whiskey straight, and she'd found it attractive in a dangerous way, unlike my preference for wine with dinner. She'd knock on his door. He'd open it. They'd look at each other with that electric recognition of the forbidden. And then, I stopped that thought, not because I couldn't handle it, but because it didn't matter what they'd do in that hypothetical hotel room. Because that hotel room wasn't going to exist. This wedding wasn't going to happen. And Claire was going to discover something she should have learned a long time ago, that the quiet ones aren't quiet because they're weak. They're quiet because they're watching, learning, waiting. And sometimes, when you mistake someone's love for worship, their patience for weakness, their trust for stupidity, you give them the exact blueprint they need to dismantle everything you've built. I opened my laptop again. The spreadsheet glowed in the pre-dawn darkness, and I began to work. By 6 a.m., I had a plan. Not a revenge plan, not yet. First came the practical architecture of disappearing from a wedding that had cost $47,000 and involved 150 guests who'd made travel arrangements, bought gifts, and arranged childcare to celebrate what they believed was love. The wedding industry doesn't prepare you for this scenario. There's no chapter in the planning books called What to Do When Your Fiance Plans to Cheat on You Between the Ceremony and Reception. No helpful timeline template for how to systematically dismantle your future while everyone sleeps. I had to improvise. The first call I made was at 6:15 a.m. to my older brother David in Seattle. He'd been slated to be my best man. He was also the only person I knew who would answer the phone at what was 3:15 a.m. his time without asking questions until after he'd confirmed I was okay. Marcus. His voice was rough with sleep, but immediately alert. What's wrong? The wedding is off, I said. My voice sounded strange to me. Calm, almost clinical, like I was reporting quarterly earnings. I need you to help me make calls. Jesus. Are you? What happened? Is Claire? Claire is fine. The wedding is off. I'll explain everything later, but right now I need your help contacting vendors and the venue. I have a list. There was a long pause. I could hear his wife murmuring in the background, probably asking what was wrong. Then David's voice came back, different now. Steady. Send me the list. I'm up. What else do you need? This is why David was my best man. Not because he was my brother, but because when the floor fell out from under you, David didn't waste time asking why gravity was working. He just helped you figure out how to land. I sent him a spreadsheet I'd already prepared. It had vendor names, contact numbers, cancellation policies, and a script for what to say. The script was important. I didn't want anyone's sympathy or questions yet. Just efficiency. Script. Hi, this is David Chun calling on behalf of Marcus Chun and Claire Whitmore. I'm calling to inform you that today's wedding has been canceled due to unforeseen circumstances. We understand there will be cancellation fees per our contract, and we're prepared to fulfill those obligations. We appreciate your understanding and will be in touch regarding final payment. professional, neutral. The kind of language that makes people process the information without drama. Next, I called the venue, Meridian Gardens, with its panoramic windows and manicured lawns, and that pergola wrapped in fairy lights where Claire and I were supposed to exchange vows in 9 hours. The events manager, Patricia, answered on the third ring. I could hear the controlled chaos of a venue preparing for a major event in the background, staff shouting about chair arrangements, someone testing a sound system. Marcus, aren't you supposed to be getting ready? We're all set here. It's going to be beautiful. Patricia, I need to cancel today's wedding. The background noise seemed to stop, though that might have been my imagination. What? Today? But we're. Marcus, your guests will start arriving in less than 8 hours. The caterers are setting up right now. The flowers just. I understand this is extremely last minute. I'm prepared to forfeit any deposits and pay whatever cancellation penalties are in the contract. But the wedding isn't happening. Is everything okay? Is someone ill? We can postpone. We have availability in. It needs to be canceled, not postponed. Can you send me the final invoice for cancellation fees? Patricia was quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice had shifted from concerned friend to professional events manager. Of course. I'll have our billing department send that over within the hour. I'm very sorry, Marcus. Thank you for understanding. After I hung up, I sat very still for a moment. My hands weren't shaking. My heart rate was normal. I felt strangely hollowed out, like I'd become a vessel for pure function. The Marcus who existed yesterday, the one who would have been devastated, who would have called Claire immediately, who would have given her a chance to explain, he was gone. Or maybe he was just sleeping. In hibernation, while this other version of me did what needed to be done. David called back. I've reached the caterer, the DJ, and the photographer. The florist number went to voicemail, but I left a message. Marcus, do Mom and Dad know? Not yet. Does Claire know? No. Another pause. Are you going to tell me what happened? Soon. But David, I need you to do something else. Anything. I need you to call the Ashford Hotel. Ask if they have a reservation today under the name Derek Castellano. If they do, cancel it. Tell them there's been an emergency and Mr. Castellano won't be needing the room after all. Offer to pay the cancellation fee. I could practically hear David's mind working through the implications of that request. The Ashford is. Marcus, that's not a place you book for overnight stays. That's a by-the-hour kind of place. And Derek Castellano is. Claire's ex-boyfriend. Yes. Oh, Jesus. Can you make the call? Consider it done. His voice had gone hard. David had met Claire dozens of times. Had welcomed her to family dinners. Had given a speech at our engagement party about how happy he was that I'd found someone who made me smile the way she did. One more thing, I said. Call the airport. I need 2 tickets to Tokyo. Today. Soonest flight available. First class if possible. 2 tickets. You're coming with me. Marcus, I have work on Monday, Sarah has. I'll pay for everything. I can't be here when this becomes real. When people find out. When she finds out. I need to be somewhere else entirely. The silence on the other end stretched so long I thought we'd been disconnected. Then, what time should I meet you at the airport? I'll text you. Thank you, David. Hey, he said softly. You're my brother. We're going to get through this. I hung up before the emotion in his voice could crack the ice I'd built around myself. The calls continued. My parents at 7 a.m. That was harder. My mother answered, already awake, probably already worrying about last-minute details in that way mothers do before big events. Marcus, today's the day. How are you feeling? Nervous? Your father's already. Mom, stop. Listen to me. I took a breath. The wedding is canceled. What followed was 15 minutes of the hardest conversation I'd ever had. My mother cycled through disbelief, denial, horror, and finally landed on protective fury when I gave her the abbreviated version of what I'd discovered. My father took the phone at some point. His reaction was quieter, but somehow more intense. Do you need me to come there? To the apartment. No. I'm leaving today. Going away for a while. What about Claire? Have you spoken to her? I'm not going to. Marcus. Dad. She planned to cheat on me today. On our wedding day. While our guests were celebrating, she was going to disappear to a hotel with her ex-boyfriend. She's been cheating on me for months, maybe longer. I don't owe her a conversation. My father was quiet for a long time. Then no. No, you don't. What do you need from us? Can you go to the venue? People are going to show up. Guests. They'll need to be told something. I've canceled with the vendors, but the guests. I can't call 150 people. We'll handle it, my mother said, back on the line now. Her voice was steel. We'll go early and intercept people. You don't worry about that. Mom, I'm sorry. I know you were excited. I know you helped pay for. Marcus Chun, you stop that right now. This is not your fault. Not even a little bit. You understand me. I nodded even though she couldn't see me. Yeah, I understand. After we hung up, I sat in the growing morning light and felt something crack in the careful control I'd built. Just a small fissure, but enough that I had to close my eyes and breathe through it. My parents had been so happy about this wedding. My mother had cried when Claire and I told them we were engaged. She'd spent months helping Claire plan, bonding with her future daughter-in-law over color swatches and venue tours. This was going to devastate them almost as much as it devastated me. Almost, but not quite, because I was the one who'd read those messages. I was the one who'd seen my future wife mock me to her friends. I was the one who'd been called pathetic and worshipful and too trusting, like those were character flaws instead of evidence that I'd loved someone completely. I looked at my phone. Still no messages from Claire. She was probably still asleep at her parents' house, dreaming of her perfect day. Her perfect wedding to stable, predictable Marcus, followed by her perfect afternoon with exciting, dangerous Derek, followed by a perfect life, where she got to have everything she wanted without consequences. I opened the group chat one more time. Read through the messages again with the cold clarity of 7:30 a.m. sunlight streaming through the window. Then I started composing a new message. Not to the group. To my phone's notes app. Something that would wait. Something that would detonate at precisely the right moment. Because Claire was about to learn something important. When you accidentally invite someone to witness their own betrayal, you give them the one thing they never had before. Time to prepare. And I'd prepared very, very well. Part 4. The morning after the night before. At 8 a.m., my phone started ringing. Claire's name lit up the screen, her contact photo. Taken at the beach last summer, her laughing in the sunset, wind-blown and beautiful, suddenly looked like evidence from a trial. Evidence of what I'd believed versus what was true. I let it go to voicemail. She called again immediately, then texted, Claire, baby, where are you? I tried calling. Claire, we have the breakfast thing with the wedding party at 9, remember? Claire, Marcus? I watched the messages appear with a strange detachment. She had no idea. In her reality, everything was proceeding according to plan. In approximately 7 hours, she'd walk down an aisle toward me. In 8 hours, if everything had gone according to her design, she'd slip away from our reception, citing bride exhaustion or a wardrobe emergency, and meet Derek at the Ashford. But that reality was already gone. It had evaporated at 11:47 p.m. last night, when Amanda's clumsy fingers had added me to that group chat. Claire just didn't know it yet. Another text. Claire. Okay, you're probably just in the shower or something. See you at breakfast. Can't wait to marry you today, red heart. The heart emoji sat there on my screen like a small red lie. I should tell you what I looked like in that moment. Not because it matters to the mechanics of what happened next, but because I want you to understand that I wasn't some action hero making calculated moves with a clenched jaw and steely eyes. I was wearing the same sweatpants I'd been in since yesterday evening. I hadn't showered. My hair was a mess. I'd been up for over 24 hours, and I probably looked like I'd been through some kind of natural disaster. Which, in a way, I had. The disaster of discovering that the person you loved most had created an entire architecture of deception around you. That you'd been living in a kind of Truman Show of faithfulness, where everyone knew the truth except you, and your trust was just a punchline in someone else's group chat. My apartment. Our apartment, the one we'd moved into 6 months ago, looked strange in the morning light. There were wedding gifts stacked in the corner, wrapped in silver and white paper, from the early arrivals and the engagement party. There was the coffee maker I'd bought Claire for Christmas because she mentioned wanting one. There was the throw blanket on the couch that she'd picked out, saying it would make the place feel more like ours. All of it felt like props now. Set dressing for a play I'd been performing in without realizing I was the only one following the script. I picked up my phone and called my boss, Richard Chun, no relation, though he joked about it constantly. He answered on the first ring, probably expecting me to be annoyingly cheerful on my wedding day. Marcus. Shouldn't you be getting ready? Richard, I need to take an emergency leave. Starting immediately. At least 2 weeks, maybe more. Today? But isn't your wedding? The wedding is canceled. I'll work remotely from abroad if absolutely necessary, but I need to be out of the country for a while. I have vacation days saved up, and I'll use those first. Richard was quiet for a moment. He was a good boss, fair, reasonable, the kind of manager who actually cared about his team beyond their quarterly numbers. Marcus, are you okay? What happened? I will be okay. Eventually. But right now I need to not be here. Take whatever time you need. And Marcus? I'm sorry. Whatever happened, I'm sorry. Thank you. After I hung up, I started packing. Not the honeymoon suitcase that was already packed and waiting by the door. That one had warm weather clothes for the Maldives, the destination Claire had chosen because it's romantic and remote, and we can just focus on each other. The bitter irony of that destination choice wasn't lost on me now. I packed a different bag, comfortable clothes, my laptop, chargers, the leather journal my grandmother had given me years ago that I'd never used, my passport. At 8:30, David texted. David, Ashford confirmed cancellation of Castellano reservation. No questions asked. Flights booked. We leave at 4 p.m. Already at the airport. Got us in the lounge. Get here when you can. Marcus, thank you. On my way soon. David, Marcus? I'm proud of you. For whatever that's worth. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I locked the apartment door behind me and drove toward the airport, leaving behind the guest room that smelled like new beginnings, the coffee maker, the wrapped gifts, and the life I'd thought I was building. The drive to the airport should have taken 40 minutes. I made it in 30, my rental car cutting through Saturday morning traffic with a kind of autopilot precision. I decided against using my own car. Something about wanting clean brakes, about not wanting to return to that vehicle later and remember this drive. My phone kept buzzing. Claire, Jessica, Amanda, my mother checking in. 2 cousins who were apparently already at Meridian Gardens and confused about why the venue looked unstaffed. I silenced everything. The airport came into view. That familiar landscape of concrete and glass, arrivals and departures, people beginning journeys and ending them. I parked in long-term parking, took my bag from the trunk, and walked through the automatic doors into the fluorescent-lit liminal space of the terminal. David was waiting at the first-class lounge like he'd promised. When I saw him, standing by the window with 2 coffee cups, looking tired and worried and protective in his older brother way, something in my chest loosened just slightly. Hey, he said simply, handing me a coffee, not asking how I was, not offering platitudes. Just being there, solid and real. Hey, we sat in the leather chairs by the window, watching planes take off and land, and I told him everything. Every message in that group chat. Every realization that had cascaded from those messages. Every small moment from the past months and years that suddenly made terrible sense. David listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time, staring out at the runway. Finally, she really called you pathetic? Yeah. And she was planning to today? During your actual wedding. 4 p.m. Between the ceremony and reception. While I was presumably making small talk with Aunt Karen about her garden. David shook his head slowly. Marcus, I don't even know what to say. I'm sorry doesn't feel like enough. It's more than she deserves to hear. Have you thought about what you're going to tell people? Long term, I mean. This is going to be a whole thing. Questions. Explanations. The narrative. I had thought about it. During the long night, between phone calls and plans, I'd considered the social calculus of canceled weddings. The way people would want to know why, would feel entitled to the story, would form opinions and take sides based on incomplete information. I'm going to tell the truth, I said. Not the details necessarily, but I'm not covering for her. I'm not going to be vague about irreconcilable differences or cold feet. She cheated. She planned to keep cheating. That's the story. David nodded. Good. She made her choices. She gets to live with the consequences. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. MOM, we're at the venue. Intercepting guests. Your father is handling it beautifully. Don't worry about anything here. Just take care of yourself. MOM, Claire keeps calling us. We're not answering. Do you want us to tell her anything? I thought about it. About Claire showing up at the venue in a few hours. Hair and makeup perfect. Dress billowing. Expecting to see me standing at that pergola wrapped in fairy lights. expecting to perform her elaborate play where I was the unsuspecting audience. Marcus, tell her nothing. She'll figure it out. At 11 a.m., we boarded the plane to Tokyo. First class, window seats. The kind of comfortable escape that money can buy when you need to put 7,000 miles between yourself and your imploding life. As we taxied toward the runway, my phone buzzed one more time. I almost ignored it. Almost let it ring through to voicemail or auto-respond with some generic text. But something made me look. It was Claire. Not a call this time. A voicemail from an hour ago that I'd missed in the chaos of boarding. I hesitated, my thumb hovering over the play button. Did I want to hear her voice? Did I want that in my head during a 13-hour flight? David glanced at me. You don't have to listen to that now. Or ever. I know. But I played it anyway. Maybe because some part of me was still hoping. Still wanting there to be some explanation that would make sense of everything. Some magic words that would unbreak what had broken at 11:47 p.m. last night. Her voice came through, bright and cheerful and completely oblivious. Hey baby, I know you're probably busy with last-minute stuff, but I just wanted to say I love you. I can't believe we're getting married today. I keep thinking about when we first met, at that terrible coffee shop with the burnt espresso, and you made that joke about how the coffee was aggressively mediocre, and I laughed so hard I snorted, remember? And I knew right then that I wanted to keep making you laugh. That I wanted to be the person who got to hear all your jokes and your dreams and your random observations about spreadsheets or whatever. You're my favorite person, Marcus. You're my home. I can't wait to spend forever with you. Okay, I have to go. The makeup artist is here and Mom is freaking out about the flowers, but I'll see you at the altar, okay? I love you so much. So much. The message ended. The plane's engines roared as we lifted off the runway. And I sat there in my first-class seat, staring at nothing, while my brother reached over and gently took the phone from my hand. That, David said quietly, is what sociopaths sound like when they think they're winning. He was right. She'd sounded genuinely happy, genuinely in love. If I'd heard that message yesterday morning, I would have melted. I would have saved it, replayed it a dozen times, felt lucky beyond measure. Now it just sounded like very, very good acting. Or, and this was somehow worse, maybe it wasn't acting at all. Maybe she really did love me in whatever compartmentalized way she understood love. Maybe in her mind, Marcus the stable partner, and Derek the exciting affair, and Jake the yoga class distraction were all somehow compatible. Maybe she'd convinced herself that she could have everything without anyone getting hurt, as long as nobody found out. The plane climbed higher, and Virginia disappeared beneath clouds. I turned my phone off completely, removed the SIM card, dropped it in the seat pocket. What happens when she figures out you're gone? David asked. I imagine she'll be angry, then embarrassed. Then she'll start doing damage control, spinning the narrative to save face, telling people I had cold feet, or that we had a mutual decision, or that I wasn't ready for commitment. And you're okay with that? I thought about it. About Claire standing at Meridian Gardens in a few hours, in that dress, with her father ready to walk her down the aisle, and slowly realizing that there was no groom, that the venue was dark, that something had gone terribly, impossibly wrong. I thought about her calling my phone and getting disconnected service, calling my parents and getting silence, calling the vendors and finding out everything was canceled, the rising panic, the confusion becoming horror, becoming comprehension. Yeah, I said, I'm okay with that, because here's what I'd learned in the 18 hours since my life had detonated. Revenge isn't about making someone hurt the way they hurt you. It's about making them finally understand what they did. And Claire was about to understand everything. Part 5. The Ghost of Meridian Gardens. We were somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, 4 hours into the flight, when my brother's phone started ringing. I'd turned mine off, but David had kept his active. In case Mom needs something, he'd said, though we both knew he meant in case there was an emergency. In case the situation back home escalated into something that required his intervention. He looked at the screen and winced. It's Sarah, his wife. She's probably getting calls. Do you want me to answer it? David stepped into the small private area near the first-class galley. I could see him through the gap in the seats, his face going through a series of expressions. Concern, disbelief, something that looked like anger, then grim satisfaction. When he came back 10 minutes later, his expression was carefully neutral. Sarah's getting blown up by Claire's friends. Apparently, the bridesmaids have been calling everyone they can think of trying to find you. Claire showed up at the venue at 1 p.m. for pre-ceremony photos and found it empty. Dark. No staff. No flowers. Nothing. I nodded slowly, imagining it. That moment of confusion. The dress rustling as she walked through the empty space. Her heels clicking on the hardwood floors. The growing realization that this wasn't some delay or mix-up. That something fundamental had changed. Sarah told them she didn't know where you were. Which is technically true. She doesn't know we're on this specific flight. How did Claire react? According to Jessica, who apparently called Sarah in hysterics, Claire thought it was a practical joke at first. Then she started calling you. Then your parents. Then the venue. That's when she found out everything had been canceled as of 6 a.m. this morning. And now, David pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot Sarah had sent him. It was from Claire's Instagram story, posted 20 minutes ago. The photo showed Claire in her wedding dress, perfectly styled, makeup immaculate, standing in what looked like her childhood bedroom. The caption read, "When your groom gets cold feet on your wedding day, broken heart, but I'm still the most beautiful bride you'll never have. Your loss, Marcus." There were already hundreds of comments. Supportive emojis. Angry reactions. People tagging me in messages I'd never see because my account was deactivated. "She's claiming you abandoned her," David said carefully. Playing the victim. I studied the photo. Claire looked stunning. There was no denying that. The dress fit perfectly, emphasizing everything it was designed to emphasize. Her makeup was flawless. She was posed in that casual but calculated way that Instagram experts master, looking both vulnerable and defiant. But I noticed something else, her eyes. Even through the digital filter, even behind the performance of wounded dignity, her eyes looked hard. Angry. Not heartbroken. Not devastated. Offended. Like I'd broken some kind of contract by not showing up to be her prop. "She's going to keep doing this," I said, spinning the story, making herself the abandoned bride. "Probably. You want to respond?" I thought about it. About the social media battlefield where narratives were won and lost in the court of public opinion. About how easy it would be to post my own story, to screenshot those group chat messages, and let the world see exactly what Claire had planned for our wedding day. No. David looked surprised. No, not yet. Let her have this moment. Let her think she's controlling the narrative. "Marcus, people are going to believe her version. They're going to think you're the asshole who left a woman at the altar. Some will. But the people who matter, our family, real friends, they'll know the truth. Everyone else." I shrugged. Their opinion was never based on reality anyway. It was based on the performance Claire and I were giving them. The happy couple. The perfect romance. If they want to believe her performance over my silence, that's their choice. David studied me for a long moment. "You've really thought this through." I had all night. "But you have proof. Those messages. You could destroy her story in seconds." "I could," I agreed. "But then what? We have a public fight on social media." She says the messages were taken out of context or that I fabricated them. We drag each other through the mud while everyone watches and chooses sides. That's not justice. That's just noise. Then what is justice? I looked out the window at the vast emptiness of the Pacific below us. Justice is her waking up every day knowing that she destroyed something real because she couldn't stop chasing something shiny. Justice is her looking for me and finding nothing. No closure. No confrontation. No big dramatic scene where she gets to perform remorse or anger or whatever emotion she thinks will work. Just absence. The person who worshipped her, who would have given her everything, who trusted her completely, that person is gone. And she has to sit with that. David was quiet for a while. Then, "That's actually pretty cold, little brother." "Yeah," I said. "I'm learning." At hour 7 of the flight, somewhere over the Bering Sea, I finally opened my laptop. I'd been avoiding it. Avoiding the temptation to check social media, to see what people were saying, to watch the narrative unfold without me. But now, with David asleep in the seat next to me and nothing but dark ocean below, I gave in. I deactivated my Instagram and Facebook accounts before leaving, but I hadn't deleted them. I could still log in as a ghost, see without being seen. Claire's Instagram had exploded. The wedding dress photo had over 2,000 comments now. Her profile had gained 500 new followers. There were 3 more story posts, each one artfully documenting her heartbreak. A photo of the empty venue with the caption, This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. A selfie with tears, possibly real, probably not, with the caption, "When you realize you never really knew someone." A group shot with her bridesmaids rallying around her with the caption, "At least I know who really loves me." I scrolled through the comments. They were predictably split. "OMG, Claire, I'm so sorry. He doesn't deserve you. You look absolutely stunning though, queen." His loss. There has to be more to this story. Marcus Chun is a coward. I always thought he was weird, tbh. Claire, you deserve so much better. But then I noticed something interesting. Several people had commented asking where I was, if I was okay, if anyone had heard from me. And Claire wasn't responding to those comments. She was only responding to the supportive ones, the ones that fed her victim narrative. I switched to a web browser and searched my own name. Local wedding forums had picked up the story. Someone had posted in a Virginia brides group, "Does anyone know what happened with the Chun Whitmore wedding at Meridian Gardens?" I was supposed to photograph it and got a cancellation this morning, but now seeing the bride's posts and I'm confused. The responses were a mixture of gossip, speculation, and surprisingly astute observations. I work at Meridian Gardens. The groom called at 6 a.m. to cancel. Very polite, very calm. Didn't sound like cold feet. Sounded like he knew exactly what he was doing. The bride's Instagram seems performative, like she's more angry than sad. My friend's cousin was invited to this wedding. Apparently, the groom's family has been telling people who showed up that it was canceled for personal reasons and refusing to elaborate. Something doesn't add up here. I closed the laptop. David stirred, opened his eyes. "You okay?" "Yeah, just checking the damage." And she's playing victim perfectly. But some people are noticing the inconsistencies. People always do. Truth has a way of surfacing, even when someone's trying to bury it. I wanted to believe that. But I learned in the past 24 hours that people are remarkably good at believing whatever narrative feels most compelling, regardless of truth. Claire was beautiful, sympathetic, and publicly heartbroken. I was silent, absent, and therefore suspicious. In the court of social media, she'd already won. But I wasn't playing for that audience. "David," I said, "thank you for being here, for dropping everything and just coming." He reached over and squeezed my shoulder. "You're my brother. I'd fly to Tokyo every day for a year if that's what you needed." The plane hummed through the darkness, carrying us further and further from Virginia, from the wedding that wasn't, from Claire and her carefully constructed victim narrative. I pulled out that leather journal my grandmother had given me, opened it to the first blank page, and I started writing. Not the full story, not yet. Just pieces, fragments, the way certain moments felt. The specific tone of Claire's voice in that voicemail. The sound of rain on the window at 11:47 p.m. The way my hands had been steady all night while I dismantled my future. I wrote because I needed to remember. Not the anger would fade, but the clarity. The moment of understanding that had come when those messages appeared on my screen. The moment I'd realized that loving someone doesn't mean accepting whatever treatment they decide you deserve. That worship isn't the same as love. It's just fear dressed up in devotion. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply not be there when someone expects you. I wrote until my hand cramped. Until David woke up fully and asked if I wanted breakfast. Flight attendants in first class apparently serve a decent omelet at 3 a.m. Pacific time, which was really noon Tokyo time, which was really some ungodly hour in Virginia, where Claire was presumably still performing her grief on social media. "You going to be okay?" David asked, watching me close the journal. I thought about it, really thought about it. Eventually, I said, "But right now? Right now I'm just going to be gone." And that, I was learning, was its own form of answer. Part 6. The City of Neon and Silence. Tokyo hit us like a wall of sensory overload. We landed at Narita at 8 p.m. local time, which my body insisted was 6 a.m. yesterday, which meant I'd been awake for approximately 48 hours if you didn't count the fitful 3-hour doze somewhere over the Pacific. The airport was pristine, efficient, overwhelming, signs in Japanese and English, business people moving with purpose, tourists looking lost, and us. 2 American men with carry-on bags and the hollow-eyed look of people running from something. David handled customs and transportation while I stood in the arrival hall, my brain struggling to process that I was here, that I'd actually done it, that somewhere, 7,000 miles away, The sun was coming up on the day after my wedding that wasn't. And Claire was probably still asleep in her childhood bed, that Instagram post still pinned to her story, her performance of victimhood getting dozens of new sympathetic comments every hour. "We have a hotel in Shibuya," David said, materializing beside me with train tickets. I figured central location, lots of sensory distraction, good baseline for figuring out what we're actually doing here. "We're hiding," I said. "No, we're regrouping. Hiding implies shame. You have nothing to be ashamed of." The train from Narita into central Tokyo took an hour. I pressed my face against the window and watched Japan unspool. Rice fields giving way to suburbs, giving way to the dense urban architecture of the city. Everything looked foreign in the best way, like I'd successfully teleported to a reality where my problems existed on a different planet. Shibuya at night was exactly what I needed. Chaos. The famous crossing with its thousands of people moving in choreographed waves. Neon signs advertising things I couldn't read. The sound of Japanese pop music bleeding from shops. The smell of yakitori and ramen and roasted sweet potatoes from street vendors. Everything bright and loud and completely divorced from anything resembling my life. We checked into a small hotel, boutique, impeccably clean, the kind of place that operates with Japanese precision. Our room had 2 narrow beds, a window overlooking an alley full of izakayas, and a silence that felt sacred after the sensory assault of the streets. I sat on one of the beds, finally allowing exhaustion to hit. David ordered food from somewhere. It arrived in neat boxes with still warm rice and grilled fish and miso soup that tasted like comfort despite being from a cuisine I'd rarely eaten. We ate in silence, too tired for conversation, processing the fact that we'd actually escaped. After dinner, David showered and passed out immediately, his snores filling the small room within minutes. I couldn't sleep. Instead, I sat by the window, watching the alley below. A couple stumbled out of an izakaya, laughing. A salaryman walked past, loosened tie, exhausted posture. A group of young people in street fashion stood around a vending machine, sharing drinks and cigarettes, and the easy intimacy of friendship. My phone was still off. The SIM card was still in my luggage, wrapped in tissue paper like a dangerous artifact. But I'd brought my laptop, and the hotel had Wi-Fi, and after an hour of watching the alley, I gave in and opened it. I didn't log into social media, didn't check email. Instead, I opened a blank document and started writing what I should have written immediately, the full, detailed account of everything that had happened. The night before my wedding, a document. By Marcus Chun. Written February 13th, 2025, Tokyo, Japan. I'm writing this at 11 p.m. on what should have been the night after my wedding. Instead, I'm in a hotel room in Shibuya, listening to my brother snore, watching strangers live their lives 7 stories below, and trying to make sense of how completely my reality shifted in less than 48 hours. This is not a social media post. This is not a public statement. This is documentation. For myself, for the future, for the moment when the clarity I feel right now starts to blur into doubt or nostalgia, or whatever revisionist emotion comes when enough time has passed. Here is what happened. I typed for 2 hours. Every detail, every message from that group chat, word for word. Every realization that had cascaded from those messages. Every phone call I'd made in the pre-dawn hours. Every choice that had led to me being in Tokyo instead of honeymooning in the Maldives. When I finished, the document was 11 pages long. I read through it twice, made sure every fact was accurate, every timeline was precise. Then I saved it in 3 places. My laptop, a cloud storage service under a new account Claire didn't know about, and a USB drive I'd bought at the airport. This was my insurance policy. My truth, preserved in amber. Not for social media, not for revenge, but for the moment, and I knew it would come, when Claire's version of events became so pervasive that even I started to doubt my own memory. I closed the laptop and finally felt tired enough to sleep. I woke up 14 hours later to David shaking my shoulder. "Marcus, it's 3 p.m. You've been unconscious for half a day." The room was bright with afternoon light. My phone was still off. The world outside was alive with Tokyo's weekend energy, different from the night before, but equally loud, equally foreign, equally perfect. "How do you feel?" David asked. "Like I've been hit by a truck." "That's jet lag and emotional trauma. Come on. Shower, food, and then we're going for a walk. You need to see the city while we're here. David, I don't think I'm up for sightseeing. I didn't say sightseeing. I said walking. There's a difference. Come on. He was right. Moving helped. We walked through Shibuya, then into Harajuku, then toward Shinjuku. David had clearly done some research while I was unconscious. He led us to small shrines tucked between buildings, to quiet gardens that existed like pockets of peace in the urban chaos, to a ramen shop where we ate in silence alongside salarymen on their lunch breaks. You know what's weird? I said, halfway through the bowl of ramen. I feel guilty. For what? For not feeling worse. For not being devastated. For eating ramen in Tokyo while Claire is probably still posting wounded Instagram stories. David set down his chopsticks. Marcus, you were devastated. You were devastated from 11:47 p.m. Friday until you got on that plane. You made 100 difficult decisions while feeling like your heart was being pulled out of your chest. Just because you're functional now doesn't mean you weren't destroyed then. And eating ramen isn't betraying your grief. It's proof that you're surviving. I nodded slowly. He was right. The devastation wasn't gone. It was just hibernating, waiting for a quiet moment to resurface. But for now, in this ramen shop in Shinjuku surrounded by people who didn't know my name or my story, I was allowed to exist without performing any particular emotion. After lunch, David suggested we visit Meiji Shrine. I know it sounds touristy, but trust me, it's what you need. The shrine was everything he'd promised, quiet, reverent, surrounded by forest despite being in the middle of Tokyo. We walked through the massive torii gate, down the gravel path, into the courtyard where people were writing wishes on wooden plaques and leaving them for the gods. You going to write one? David asked. I looked at the plaques. Prayers for good health, successful exams, happy marriages. Hope arranged in neat rows, suspended on wooden boards, waiting for divine intervention. I don't know what I'd write, I admitted. Write what you need to hear. I bought a plaque, stood there with a marker, thinking, what did I need to hear? What wisdom was I looking for from Shinto deities who didn't know me or my situation? Finally, I wrote, may I remember this clarity. Not a wish for Claire to suffer. Not a prayer for revenge or vindication. Just a request to hold on to the understanding that had come at 11:47 p.m. Friday night. The understanding that I deserved better than I'd been getting. That love without respect isn't love at all. I hung the plaque among the others and walked back to where David was waiting. Feel better? He asked. Surprisingly, yes. That night, back at the hotel, David finally brought up the question I'd been avoiding. How long are we staying here? I don't know. Marcus, I know I can't hide forever. I know I have to go back eventually, face people, deal with the aftermath. But right now, I'm not ready. Every time I think about returning to Virginia, about walking into my apartment or going to my office or running into someone who wants to hear what really happened, I feel like I can't breathe. David nodded slowly. Okay, then we don't go back yet. We have time. I talked to Sarah. She's good, supports whatever you need. Work gave me 2 weeks, and I can probably extend it. So we stay. We figure it out here. You do that. Marcus, you just found out your fiancé was planning to cheat on you during your wedding reception. You're allowed to need more than 48 hours to process that. Stay in Tokyo. Hell, stay in Asia. We can go to Thailand, Vietnam, wherever. Just don't go back before you're ready. I felt something loosen in my chest, the pressure of imagined obligations of what I should be doing. Maybe David was right. Maybe the best thing I could do right now was give myself permission to be gone for as long as I needed. Thank you, I said. Hey, David said, his voice softer. You've spent the last 3 years taking care of someone who was actively betraying you. Maybe it's time someone took care of you for a change. That night, for the first time since Friday, I turned my phone back on. Not to engage, not to respond, just to see. The messages came flooding in, hundreds of them. Texts, missed calls, voicemails, app notifications. I scrolled through sender names without opening anything. Claire, 47 messages. Jessica, 12 messages. Amanda, 8 messages. Various cousins, friends, co-workers, people I barely knew who apparently felt entitled to explanations. One message caught my eye. From my mother, sent this morning. Claire showed up at our house. We didn't let her in. She wanted to know where you are, if you're safe, if we can talk sense into you. Your father told her she's not welcome on our property. I've never seen him that cold. I'm proud of him. I'm proud of you. Stay gone as long as you need. We'll handle things here. I felt a wave of gratitude so intense it physically hurt. Then I saw Claire's most recent message, sent 3 hours ago. Marcus, I know you're reading these eventually. I don't know what happened or why you left, but we need to talk. You owe me that much. You can't just disappear without explanation. This isn't fair. I deserve to understand. Please. I love you. Whatever's wrong, we can fix it. Just talk to me. I read it 3 times. Then I opened the Notes app and typed a response I didn't send. You want an explanation? Here it is. I was accidentally added to your group chat. I read every message. Every laugh about how pathetic and trusting I am. Every detail of your plan to fuck your ex-boyfriend during our wedding reception. Every dismissal of our relationship as something you could compartmentalize and manage. You want to know what happened? I woke up. And you want to know what's unfair? You thinking you deserve an explanation from me when you spent our entire relationship lying. But I didn't send it. Because sending it would give her what she wanted. Engagement. Drama. A confrontation she could spin and perform and eventually use to make herself the victim in a different way. Instead, I turned the phone off again. Smart move, David said from his bed, apparently still awake. She says I owe her an explanation. Yeah, people who betray you always think they're owed something from you. It's part of the delusion. I lay back on my narrow bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of Tokyo outside, a city that didn't care about canceled weddings or group chat betrayals or the complicated mathematics of whose fault anything was. Tomorrow, I decided, I'd start actually experiencing Japan instead of just hiding in it. But tonight, I'd let myself be tired. Let myself be gone. Let myself exist in this liminal space between the life I'd lost and whatever came next. And that was enough. We stayed in Tokyo for 8 days. I won't bore you with a travelogue. This isn't that kind of story. But I need you to understand what those 8 days were, because they were the chrysalis stage. The time between what I was and what I was becoming. David and I fell into a rhythm. Wake up late. Eat breakfast at different konbini stores, Japanese convenience stores that somehow made even packaged sandwiches feel like small miracles. Walk for hours through different neighborhoods. Eat dinner at tiny restaurants where we were often the only non-Japanese customers. Return to the hotel exhausted. We didn't talk about Claire much. When we did, it was practical. David updating me on message traffic, declining. Social media activity, still performative but getting less engagement. Family status, holding strong. Mostly, we just existed in Tokyo's particular brand of organized chaos. Visited Team Lab Borderless, and digital art museum where you walk through projections of flowers and waterfalls and fractals, losing yourself in light and motion. Spent an afternoon in Akihabara, the electronics district, where David bought gadgets he didn't need, and I watched people be enthusiastic about things with an intensity one envied. Took a day trip to Nikko to see temples and mountains and rivers, breathing in cold mountain air that felt like it was cleaning something inside me. On day 5, we were sitting in a park in Ueno, watching people feed pigeons and walk dogs and practice Tai Chi, when David asked, "Have you thought about what you're actually angry about?" "What do you mean?" "I'm angry about all of it." "Yeah, but what's the core of it?" "Because I've been watching you, and you're not acting like someone who's heartbroken over a lost relationship. You're acting like someone who's been insulted." I thought about it. He was right. I think. I started slowly. I think what makes me angriest is that she thought I was stupid, that she looked at my trust and saw weakness, that she and her friends sat around laughing about how easy I was to deceive. It's not even the cheating, it's the contempt. She didn't respect me enough to either be faithful or honest. She just kept me around like a security blanket while she did whatever she wanted. David nodded. Yeah, that's the real betrayal. Not the actions, the attitude behind them. And the worst part? She was probably right. I was easy to deceive. I believed everything she told me. Trusted every explanation. Never questioned anything because I thought that's what love was. Complete faith. That's not a flaw, Marcus. That's just what being a decent person looks like. You're not stupid for trusting someone you were about to marry. She's evil for exploiting that trust. I don't think she's evil. I think she's just compartmentalized. Like she genuinely believes she can love me and cheat on me simultaneously. That those two things exist in separate boxes and don't affect each other. That's still fucked up. Oh, completely. We sat in silence for a while, watching an old woman throw breadcrumbs to pigeons with the focused dedication of ritual. So what are you going to do? David asked. Long term. You can't stay in Japan forever. I know. I've been thinking about it. I need to go back to the apartment, at least, get my things, make it official that we're done. But I don't want to see her. Don't want to give her the confrontation she's clearly desperate for. You could have a lawyer handle everything. Maybe. But also, I paused, trying to articulate something I'd been feeling for days. I want to do something. Not revenge, exactly, but something that makes it clear that her version of events, that I'm the coward who abandoned her, isn't true. I want the truth out there. The group chat screenshots? Maybe. I don't know. It feels too social media, too public. Like I'd be stooping to her level. David pulled out his phone. Can I show you something? He navigated to Claire's Instagram. She'd posted daily since the wedding that wasn't. Each post more elaborate than the last. A photo of her wedding dress hanging in her closet. Sometimes the hardest part isn't losing someone. It's losing who you thought they were. A selfie with minimal makeup, looking devastated. Day 4 of trying to understand how someone who claimed to love you could just disappear. A picture of the wedding invitations. Save the dates for a future that never came. Her follower count had jumped to over 8,000. Comments on each post were in the hundreds. She'd accidentally become a micro-influencer through her performance of heartbreak. She's building a brand off this, David said. The abandoned bride. The victim of cold feet. She's probably already been contacted by local news stations, wedding blogs, maybe even some sympathetic podcasts. He was right. Claire had always been good at social media. Knew how to frame shots, write captions that felt authentic while being carefully curated, engage with comments to boost algorithmic visibility. Now she was applying those skills to rewriting our story. So what do? Post my own sob story. Share the screenshots with a caption like, actually here's what really happened. That feels cheap, David finished. Yeah, it does. But sometimes cheap is effective. I took his phone and scrolled through Claire's posts again. Read the comments. Saw strangers offering her support based on a narrative that was fundamentally false. And I realized something. I didn't care. Not about the strangers, anyway. They didn't know me. Their opinions were based on a performance. And if they wanted to believe that performance, that was their choice. Getting into a public battle with Claire over who was the real victim would just feed the drama she was clearly thriving on. But there were people I did care about. Friends, extended family, professional contacts who might have seen her posts and were now wondering what happened. People whose opinions actually mattered to my life. I'll write something, I said. Not a social media post. A letter, maybe. Or an email. Something I can send to the people who actually matter, explaining what happened. The facts, not the drama. And I'll leave it at that. Anyone who wants to believe Claire's version after reading mine can go ahead. That's very measured of you. I've had 8 days to practice being measured. Plus jet lag has made me too tired for righteous anger. David laughed. The first genuine laugh I'd heard from either of us in over a week. Okay, write your letter. And then what? Then I go back. Face it. Move on. Just like that. Absolutely not just like that. It's going to be horrible and awkward and painful and probably take years to fully process. But yes, eventually, just like that. That night, I wrote the letter. Not in the style of the group chat documentation. That was evidence, cold and precise. This was something else. Something human. To my friends, family, and anyone wondering what happened. By now you've probably seen Claire's social media posts about our canceled wedding. You've probably seen her frame this as a story of abandonment. A bride left without explanation. A groom who simply disappeared. Here is the truth, as simply as I can state it. The night before our wedding, I was accidentally added to a private group chat between Claire and her bridesmaids. In that chat, I discovered that Claire had been having affairs throughout our relationship, including with her ex-boyfriend Derek. I learned that she had plans to meet him during our wedding reception while I was presumably entertaining guests. I also learned that she and her friends viewed me as naive, pathetic, and easy to deceive. That they laughed about my trust. That they viewed our marriage as something she could maintain while continuing to see other people. I have screenshots of these conversations. I'm not sharing them publicly because I don't believe in humiliation as justice. But they exist, they're documented, and they're available to anyone who genuinely needs to verify what I'm saying. When I discovered this, I made a choice. I canceled the wedding, informed all vendors in the venue, asked my parents to intercept guests, and left the country to process what had happened. I didn't confront Claire because I didn't know her that. She forfeited the right to my explanations when she spent months lying to me. I'm sharing this not to wage a public relations battle, but because I owe the truth to people who actually matter to me. What you do with this information is up to you. I don't need you to choose sides or make public statements or get involved in any way. I just need you to have the actual facts. Claire is a talented performer. She spent the past week crafting a narrative of victimhood that feels compelling because she's good at making things feel compelling. But talent at storytelling doesn't make the story true. I'm okay. I'm processing. I'm moving forward. And I'm grateful to everyone who's reached out with genuine concern rather than curiosity or judgment. With appreciation, Marcus. I read it over a dozen times, edited it, simplified it, made sure every sentence was factual and unemotional. Then I saved it as a draft. That's good, David said, reading over my shoulder. Straightforward, dignified, doesn't stoop to her level, but makes the truth clear. You think people will believe me? The ones who matter will. The ones who don't. Fuck him. I laughed despite myself. Very philosophical. I contain multitudes. I closed the laptop. Tomorrow, I'd send the letter. Tomorrow, I'd start the process of returning to reality, to Virginia, to the aftermath that was waiting for me like a complicated piece of furniture that needed assembling. But tonight, I sat by the window of our Tokyo hotel room, watching the city lights, feeling something that wasn't quite peace, but wasn't devastation either. Maybe this was what healing looked like in its earliest stages. Not happiness, not resolution, but the absence of the constant ache that had lived in my chest since Friday night. The absence of the person I'd been, making room for whoever I was becoming. On our last day in Tokyo, David and I went to Tokyo Skytree, the tallest structure in Japan, a broadcast tower that pierces the sky like a steel needle. We took the elevator to the observation deck, 350 meters up, and stood at the windows looking out at the vast sprawl of the city. You ever think about how small our problems are? David said. Like, from up here, all the drama and heartbreak and bullshit, it's invisible. Just lights and buildings and people going about their lives. Yeah, but we still have to live down there. True, but sometimes it helps to remember the scale. That your canceled wedding? Your cheating ex? In the grand scheme of this city, this country, this world, it barely registers. You're going to be okay because statistically, almost everyone ends up okay. Even when they feel like they're dying, they usually don't actually die. That's morbidly comforting. I specialize in morbidly comforting. We stood there for a long time, watching Tokyo exist without us. This massive organism of humanity that didn't care about Marcus Chun or Claire Whitmore or what happened or didn't happen at Meridian Gardens on a Saturday afternoon in Virginia. And David was right. There was something deeply comforting about that irrelevance. We flew back to Virginia on day 9. Different flight, different seats, different energy. The outbound flight had been escape. This one was return. Facing it. Whatever it turned out to be. David dozed while I stayed awake, watching the map on the seatback screen as we crossed back over the Pacific, over Alaska, over Canada, tracking our progress toward home. Home. The apartment I'd shared with Claire. The city where everyone knew about the canceled wedding by now. The job where colleagues would have questions. The social circles where I'd have to navigate the awkwardness of shared friends choosing sides. All of it waiting for me like an exam I hadn't studied for. But I also had something I didn't have 9 days ago. Clarity. Distance. And a document saved in 3 locations detailing exactly what had happened. That would have to be enough. When we landed at Dulles at 6 p.m. on a gray Tuesday evening, I turned my phone on for the first time in days. The messages had slowed. Only 12 new ones, mostly from concerned friends who'd read my letter. I'd sent it from Tokyo, blind copied to about 50 people, and then immediately closed my email. One message stood out. From my friend Kyle, someone I'd known since college. Got your letter. I believe you. For what it's worth, I saw Claire out with some guy at a bar last night. She didn't see me, but she didn't look heartbroken. She looked fine. Just thought you should know. I showed it to David. Less than 2 weeks after the wedding, he said. Classy. Probably Derek. Probably. You okay? Yeah. Actually, yeah. It's almost a relief. Proof that her Instagram grief is exactly as performative as I thought. We collected our bags, got through customs, took an Uber back to David's place in Arlington where I'd be staying temporarily. The Virginia landscape looked exactly like it had when I left. Same roads, same buildings, same February gray sky. But I felt different moving through it. Like I'd been gone years instead of days. Like I'd aged in some crucial way that had nothing to do with calendar time. Tomorrow, David said as we pulled up to his house, you deal with the apartment situation. Figure out the logistics. Tonight, you just exist. Thanks for everything, I said. For coming with me. For not asking too many questions. For just being there. Marcus, you're my little brother. I'd do it again tomorrow if you needed me to. Inside, Sarah had made dinner. Simple pasta, salad, comfort food that didn't require conversation. We ate while David filled her in on Tokyo, on my letter, on the general plan for reentry. After dinner, I excused myself to the guest room. Sat on the bed, stared at my phone. One more message had come in while we were eating. From Claire. I know you're back. We need to talk. This has gone on long enough. You don't get to just erase me from your life without explanation. That's not how relationships work. I deserve closure. I read it twice. Then I typed a response, the only one she'd get from me. You got closure at 11:47 p.m. on February 11th when your bridesmaid accidentally added me to your group chat. You got closure when I read every message about your affairs and your plans and your contempt for my trust. You got closure when you mocked me to your friends and called me pathetic for believing you. The only thing you deserve now is the same silence you would have given me if I'd never found out. Goodbye, Claire. I hit send before I could second guess it. Then I blocked her number. Blocked her on every platform. Set up email filters to automatically delete anything from her address. Not because I was afraid of what she'd say, but because I was done. Completely, finally done. The conversation was over. And for the first time since this started, I felt something that might have been peace. The apartment was worse than I'd imagined. I'd planned to go alone, deal with it myself, pack my things without witnesses. But David insisted on coming, and Sarah invited herself along with coffee and trash bags and the kind of practical emotional support that makes impossible tasks merely difficult. We arrived at 10 a.m. on Wednesday. The building looked exactly the same. Modern exterior, neat landscaping, the parking garage where my car still sat. Claire had a key, but apparently hadn't touched it. Everything normal on the outside. Inside was a different story. The door wasn't locked, or rather, it was locked, but my key still worked, which meant Claire hadn't changed the locks. Small blessing. I pushed it open. The first thing I noticed was the smell. Stale air, unwashed dishes, something floral and cloying that I recognized as Claire's perfume, like she'd been frantically spraying it everywhere. The second thing was the mess. Our apartment, previously tidy, organized, a space we'd carefully arranged together, looked like a crime scene from a tantrum. Couch cushions on the floor, books swept off shelves, picture frames face down on every surface. And there, in the center of the living room, like some kind of artistic installation of rage. My clothes. All of them. Every shirt, every pair of pants, every tie and sock and underwear, pulled from the closet and piled in a massive heap. Jesus, David muttered. Sarah picked up a shirt from the pile. Did she cut them? She had. Not all of them, but enough to make the point. Scissors taken to sleeves, collars, pant legs. Destroying what she couldn't keep. Well, I said, my voice strangely calm. At least I know she got the message. On the kitchen counter, I found a note. Claire's handwriting. The same handwriting that had written our wedding vows. You're a coward and a liar, and you destroyed the best thing that ever happened to you. I hope you're happy with yourself. You'll never find anyone who loved you the way I did. You'll die alone, and you'll deserve it. I read it out loud. David and Sarah exchanged looks. That's... Sarah started. Actually helpful, I finished. Evidence that she's not the victim she's playing on Instagram. David, take a picture of this. And the pile. And everything. While David documented the apartment's state, I walked through the rooms, cataloging damage. The bedroom, our bedroom, where we'd slept together for 6 months, was destroyed. The mattress was stripped, sheets presumably taken or thrown away. Her side of the closet was empty. My side was empty too, since those clothes were now in the living room pile. The guest room, the one I'd been sleeping in the night before the wedding, was untouched. Somehow that felt significant, like she'd wanted to erase the spaces we'd shared, but couldn't bring herself to destroy the room where I'd been alone. In the bathroom, all my toiletries were in the trash. In the kitchen, my coffee mugs were smashed in the sink. She was thorough, Sarah observed. She was angry, I corrected. There's a difference. Thorough would have been changing the locks and having my things professionally packed. This is just rage. Are you going to report this? This is destruction of property. And accomplish what? Get her in legal trouble? Make this messy, eh? No. I'm going to document everything. Take what isn't destroyed and let the landlord deal with the rest. We spent 3 hours sorting through the wreckage. Most of my clothes were unsalvageable, cut up or stained with what looked like wine and coffee and possibly bleach. My books were intact. My laptop and important documents had been in my bag when I'd left, thankfully. Everything else, collateral damage. You could sue her, David said as we packed salvageable items into trash bags. Small claims court. Make her pay for the destroyed property. I could, but then I'd have to see her. Talk to lawyers. Attend hearings. Extend this whole thing for months. I picked up a shirt that had been one of my favorites. Blue Oxford, perfectly broken in. Now with sleeves cut off at the shoulders. Some things aren't worth the energy of justice. Sarah was quiet for a moment, then. Marcus, can I ask you something? Sure. Are you actually okay? Like really okay? Because you're being very calm about all this, and that's either really healthy or really concerning. I thought about it. Was I okay? I'm in triage mode, I said finally, dealing with one thing at a time. If I stop and actually feel all of this, the betrayal, the destruction, the sheer meanness of it, I'll collapse. So I'm just moving forward, handling logistics, saving the emotional processing for later. That's fair, Sarah said. But promise me you'll actually do that processing eventually. This isn't something you can just organize into a spreadsheet. I know. I will. Just not today. By 2 p.m., we'd cleared out everything worth keeping. Not much, in the end. Some books, some documents, a few personal items that had sentimental value and had somehow escaped Claire's rampage. Everything fit in the back of David's SUV with room to spare. My entire life in this apartment reduced to 3 trash bags and a cardboard box. I did a final walkthrough, making sure we hadn't missed anything. The apartment looked even worse empty. The pile of destroyed clothes, the broken mugs, the chaos of what had been our shared space. On the kitchen counter, I left my set of keys and a note. I've removed my belongings. The lease is in both our names through May, but I'll continue paying my half until you can find a subtenant or we can break it early. Contact me through my lawyer for any necessary communication. The destruction of my property has been documented. Professional. Cold. Exactly what the situation required. As we were leaving, Sarah stopped me. Hey, one more thing. She pulled out her phone and showed me Claire's Instagram, a new post from an hour ago. A selfie of Claire crying, or trying to look like she was crying. Her makeup was suspiciously intact. Caption, just found out he came to the apartment while I was gone and took his things without even leaving a note. Not even a goodbye. This is how little I meant to him. The comments were predictably sympathetic. I stared at it for a moment, then started laughing. Not bitter laughter, genuinely amused laughter. She posted that an hour ago, I said, which means she must have come back to the apartment, seen that I'd been there, and immediately crafted this narrative. That's honestly impressive. The commitment to the performance. You're not angry? I'm exhausted. There's a difference. We drove to David and Sarah's house, unloaded my trash bags of belongings into their garage. The contrast was stark. From an apartment I'd thought of as the beginning of my adult life to a guest room in my brother's house at age 29, like I'd somehow regressed 5 years. You can stay here as long as you need, Sarah said. Seriously, no rush. Thank you, but I should probably start looking for my own place. Can't camp out in your guest room forever. Why not? We've got the space. And honestly, David's been happier this week than I've seen him in months. Having his little brother around has been good for him. I looked at David, who shrugged. It's true. I mean, the circumstances are terrible, but having you here feels like old times. Before we both got too busy with our own lives to hang out. Something warm expanded in my chest, Gratitude? Or recognition? Or just the relief of not being alone? Okay, I said. But I'm paying rent. And utilities. Deal, Sarah said. Now come inside. I made lasagna, and you look like you need about 9,000 calories and a nap. That evening, after dinner and that promised nap, I finally opened my email. The letter I'd sent from Tokyo had generated responses, lots of them. I scrolled through. From my friend Maya. Marcus, I'm so sorry. I saw Claire's posts and knew something was off. Thank you for the truth. Let me know if you need anything. From my cousin Rachel. What an absolute nightmare. I always thought there was something performative about her, but I figured I was just being judgmental. I'm here if you need to talk. From my college roommate James. Bro. FUCK that. Want me to slash her tires? I won't, but I want you to know I want to. From various other friends and family members. Variations on support, belief, offers of help. But also some other responses. From Claire's friend Brittany, who I'd met maybe twice. I don't know what you think you're accomplishing with this letter, but you're only making yourself look worse. Claire is devastated. Whatever you think happened, leaving someone at the altar is unforgivable. From a mutual friend, Kevin. Hey man, I got your email, but I also saw Claire's side. Not trying to take sides, but have you considered that maybe there's a misunderstanding? Maybe you should talk to her before you send things like this to everyone. From my Aunt Patricia, my mother's sister, never liked me much. This is between you and Claire. Airing private matters to everyone is childish. You should be ashamed. I read those responses with interest. Not anger, just the clinical observation that even when you present clear facts, some people will choose the narrative that feels more emotionally compelling. Claire was beautiful, public in her grief, and playing a role people recognized, the abandoned bride. I was silent, absent, and presenting information that required people to reconsider what they'd already decided. Some would believe me, some wouldn't, and that was fine. I drafted responses to the supportive messages, brief thank yous, nothing elaborate, deleted the unsupportive ones without responding, left Kevin's on unread. If he genuinely thought there might be a misunderstanding, he wasn't someone whose opinion mattered anyway. Then I did something I'd been avoiding. I looked at my own social media accounts. I deactivated them before leaving, but the accounts still existed. I reactivated Facebook, not to post anything, just to see what had been said. My timeline was chaos. Friends tagging me in posts asking if I was okay. Claire's friends posting thinly veiled subtweets about cowards and men who can't commit. Someone had created a poll. Who's in the wrong, Marcus or Claire? Results were 60% Claire, 40% Marcus, which honestly was better than I'd expected. And there, pinned at the top of Claire's profile, visible to everyone, a photo of us from last Christmas, both smiling, my arm around her. Caption: thought this was love. Turns out you can spend years with someone and never really know them. PSA: if someone seems too good to be true, they probably are. I learned that the hard way. Wishing him well wherever he is, and hoping he finds whatever he's looking for. I know now that it wasn't me. Broken heart. It was perfect. Magnanimous. Wounded. The appearance of taking the high road while still clearly positioning herself as the victim. The comments were overwhelming. Hundreds of people offering support, sharing their own stories of betrayal, praising her strength. I read through it all with a strange detachment. This was Claire's reality now, the one she'd built through careful curation and strategic vulnerability. And somewhere in that reality, she probably believed her own story, had convinced herself that I was the villain who'd abandoned her without cause, who'd broken her heart and disappeared without explanation. The cognitive dissonance required to hold that belief while knowing what she'd written in that group chat was impressive. I closed Facebook, deactivated again. The conversation out there, in social media land, in the court of public opinion, wasn't one I needed to participate in. The only conversation that mattered was the one I was having with myself, about who I was now, what I wanted, and how to move forward from the rubble of plans I'd made with someone who was never making the same plans with me. That night, lying in David and Sarah's guest room, I pulled out the leather journal I'd bought in Tokyo, opened to a fresh page, and started writing, not documentation this time, but something else, something closer to meditation. Things I know now that I didn't know 2 weeks ago. 1. Trust is a gift, not a weakness. I wasn't stupid for trusting Claire. She was cruel for exploiting it. 2. Love and respect are inseparable. What I felt was love. What she felt was something else. Convenience, maybe. Security, but not respect. 3. Someone's public performance of emotion doesn't reflect their private reality. Claire crying on Instagram doesn't mean she's actually devastated. It means she's good at Instagram. 4. The hardest thing about betrayal isn't the initial pain. It's recalibrating your entire understanding of the past. Every memory is suspect now. Every sweet moment might have been a lie. 5. I will survive this. Not because I'm strong or special, but because humans are remarkably resilient. We survive breakups and canceled weddings and public humiliation. We wake up the next day and the day after that until eventually we've woken up so many days in a row that the pain has become background noise. 6. Tokyo exists. This is oddly comforting. The world is vast and full of places that don't care about my problems. 7. I'm grateful for David. For Sarah. For my parents. For everyone who believed me without needing a full legal brief of evidence. 8. I'm also grateful, in a strange way, for Amanda's clumsy fingers adding me to that group chat. Because the alternative, marrying Claire and finding out months or years later, would have been so much worse. 9. I don't need Claire to understand what she did wrong. I don't need her apology or her acknowledgement or her anything. I just need to not be with her anymore. 10. This journal was a gift from my grandmother, who died 2 years ago. She told me to use it when life gets complicated. Grandma, if you're out there somewhere, life got extremely complicated, but I think I'm handling it. Hope you're proud. I closed the journal and turned off the light. Tomorrow, I'd call lawyers about the apartment lease. Start job hunting. I couldn't keep working at the same company, not with everyone knowing my story. Look for my own place. Begin the practical architecture of rebuilding. But tonight, I let myself just exist. Tired, hollowed out, but somehow okay. The night before my wedding, my future wife had accidentally shown me exactly who she was. And I'd seen clearly. That clarity, I was learning, was its own kind of gift. Even if it came wrapped in the worst possible packaging. 3 weeks passed. I want to tell you that they were dramatic weeks, full of confrontations and revelations, and the kind of cathartic moments that make for good storytelling. But mostly they were just administrative. I hired a lawyer, a woman named Patricia Chun, still no relation, still made me smile every time she introduced herself, who specialized in disentangling complicated domestic situations. She handled communication with Claire about the lease, Claire's position. I should pay the entire remainder since I abandoned her. Patricia's response, absolutely not. And also here's documentation of property destruction. We settled on splitting costs through the end of the lease in May, at which point Claire would either need to re-rent or move out. I found a studio apartment in Alexandria, small, furnished, month-to-month lease. Nothing special, but it was mine. No shared history. No ghosts. I gave notice at my job. Richard tried to talk me out of it, offered me a transfer to a different department, remote work options. But I needed a clean break. Everything in Virginia was contaminated now. Every coffee shop where Claire and I had gone, every restaurant, every park. I needed somewhere new. I applied for positions in Seattle, near David, Portland, because why not, and Austin, because I'd always been curious. Got interviews for 2 of them. Started making plans for whatever came next. My social life recalibrated. Some friends stayed close. Maya, James, a few others who'd read my letter and believed it. Some friends drifted away, either because they believed Claire's version or because they didn't want to choose sides. Kevin, the mutual friend who'd suggested I might be misunderstanding things, stopped responding to texts after I politely declined his invitation to all grab drinks together and work this out. My parents came to visit one weekend. My mother hugged me for about 5 straight minutes when she arrived, and my father took me out for a long walk where we didn't really talk about Claire, but he told me stories about his own heartbreaks before he met Mom, and I understood that he was saying, "You will survive this because everyone survives this." Claire's Instagram continued to document her healing journey. Each post was a masterclass in performing recovery. A photo of her with friends at a wine bar, surrounded by people who actually love me to hearts. A selfie at the gym, getting stronger in every way. A picture of a sunset. Some endings are actually beginnings. Her follower count had plateaued around 10,000. She'd started posting sponsored content, vitamin supplements, workout gear, a meditation app. Apparently public heartbreak was monetizable. I didn't follow her anymore, obviously. But friends sent screenshots sometimes, unable to resist sharing the spectacle. You know she's seeing Derek openly now, right? Maya told me over coffee one afternoon. Like, posting pictures with him. Not tagging him, but it's obviously him. Good for them, I said, meaning it. Honestly, they deserve each other. You're really okay with it. Maya, she's not my problem anymore. What she does, who she sees, what she posts, none of it affects me. That's the whole point. Damn. You've really moved on. I thought about that. Had I moved on? Not completely. Some nights I still woke up with anxiety attacks, sudden panic about weddings that weren't happening, lives that weren't starting, futures that were canceled. Some days I still found myself angry at random moments, furious at Claire for the sheer disrespect of it all. But mostly I just felt free. Free from the constant low-level anxiety I'd carried for months without recognizing it. The nagging sense that something was off in my relationship, that Claire was pulling away or hiding something, that I was failing in some way I couldn't quite identify. I hadn't been wrong. My gut had been trying to tell me something. I'd just been too in love to listen. Now I was listening to everything. On a Thursday in early March, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, had been screening calls religiously to avoid Claire or anyone calling on her behalf. But something made me pick up. Marcus Chun, a woman's voice, professional. Speaking. Hi, my name is Jennifer Walsh. I'm a producer for a podcast called Second Chances. We focus on stories of life disruptions and how people recover. I'm calling because I heard about your canceled wedding and I think our audience would be really interested in your perspective. I was silent for a moment, processing. How did you hear about my wedding? Well, your ex-fiance actually reached out to us. She was interested in being interviewed. We did some background research and found your side of the story, the letter you sent to friends. And we thought, well, it might be interesting to hear from both of you. I see. Claire's already agreed to record an episode. We'd love to have you on as well, to share your perspective. It would be really compelling. I'm going to stop you right there, I said, trying to keep my voice even. I appreciate the offer, but I'm not interested in participating in Claire's media tour. If she wants to monetize our failed relationship through podcast interviews, that's her choice. But I'm not going to help her do it. Oh, it's not like that, Jennifer said quickly. This isn't about monetization, it's about storytelling. About helping people who've gone through similar. Jennifer, can I be frank with you? Of course. Claire is going to tell you a story about a bride abandoned at the altar. She's going to cry, or sound like she's about to cry. She's going to talk about confusion and heartbreak and not understanding what went wrong. She's very good at that story. She's been perfecting it for weeks. And your story would be different? My story is that she cheated on me, planned to cheat on me on our wedding day, and I found out by accident and chose not to participate in that humiliation. But that's not a story that needs to be on a podcast. That's just facts that I've shared with people who matter to me. But Marcus, don't you want people to know the truth? To hear your side? I thought about that. Did I want people to know the truth? The people who need to know the truth already know it, I said finally. Everyone else is just entertainment seeking. And I'm not interested in being entertainment. So that's a no? That's a no. But Jennifer? When you interview Claire, you might want to ask her about her ex-boyfriend Derek Castellano, about Jake from her yoga class, about whether she's ever accidentally added someone to a group chat they weren't supposed to see. Just, for journalistic thoroughness. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were shaking. Not from anger, from something else. The realization of how close I'd been to getting sucked back into Claire's orbit, even tangentially. To becoming a character in her narrative redemption arc. No, I was done being a character in Claire's stories. I was the protagonist of my own life now. That weekend, David and I went hiking in Shenandoah, not talking about anything heavy, just walking, breathing cold March air, being brothers. At the summit of Old Rag Mountain, looking out at the endless blue-green ridges, David said, "You seem different." Different how? Lighter. Like you finally put something down. Maybe I have. Or maybe I'm just too tired to keep carrying it. Either way, it's good to see. You've been through hell. You're allowed to start feeling okay again. I thought about that. Was I allowed to feel okay? The wedding that wasn't had been less than a month ago. Was there a statute of limitations on grief? Some appropriate mourning period I should observe before moving on? I don't think I'm moving on, I said. I think I'm just continuing. Like, my life didn't end when Claire and I ended. It just changed direction. And maybe that direction is better. Definitely better. That direction doesn't include someone who mocked you to her friends. True. We stood there for a while, watching ravens circle below us, feeling the wind, existing in that particular peace that comes from being in a place that has no opinion about your problems. Hey, Marcus. Yeah, I'm proud of you. The way you've handled this, the silence, the dignity, not getting dragged into public fights. A lot of people would have burned everything down. You just walked away. I'm not sure walking away is the same as strength. Sometimes it absolutely is. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is refuse to fight a battle you didn't start. On April 1st, exactly 6 weeks after the canceled wedding, I got an email from Patricia Chun, my lawyer. Subject, lease situation update. Marcus, Claire has agreed to take over the full lease starting May 1st. You're officially off the hook for any remaining obligations. Just need your signature on the attached documents. Also, and I tell you this not because it's legally relevant, but because I think you'll find it interesting, Claire apparently got engaged last week to someone named Derek Castellano. She's been telling the landlord she needs to keep the apartment because she and her new fiance are moving in together. Thought you'd want to know. Patricia, I read it twice. Then I started laughing. 6 weeks. It had been 6 weeks since our wedding date, and Claire was already engaged to Derek, the ex-boyfriend she'd been planning to sneak away with during our reception. The exciting, dangerous one she'd mentioned in that group chat with such enthusiasm. I forwarded the email to David with the subject line. Well, that was fast. His response came immediately. Jesus Christ. Think they'll make it to the altar? Not our problem, I wrote back. And the beautiful thing was, it really wasn't. That night, I opened my journal and wrote, today I learned that Claire is engaged to Derek. My first thought was, good. My second thought was, I hope he knows what he's getting into. My third thought was, actually, I hope he doesn't. I hope she does to him exactly what she did to me. I hope he trusts her completely, and she betrays that trust casually, and he discovers it in the worst possible way. I hope he learns the same lesson I did. Then I felt bad for thinking that. Then I felt not bad for thinking that. Then I realized I don't actually care either way. That's growth, right? Not caring. Not being invested in the karmic justice of the universe. Just moving on with my own life, while Claire's speed runs through the same patterns with a different victim. I got the job in Seattle. Start date is May 15th. New city, new position, new everything. I'm going to be okay. Maybe I already am. I closed the journal and looked around my small studio apartment. My books on the shelf. My coffee maker on the counter. My laptop where I'd written code and job applications, and that letter explaining what happened. Everything simple, clean mine. No history. No ghosts. No shared spaces with someone who was always planning an exit strategy while pretending to build a future. Just me, starting over. And that was enough. I moved to Seattle on May 10th. The drive across the country was intentional. I wanted to feel the distance. Wanted to physically watch Virginia disappear in my rearview mirror, mile by mile, until it was just a place on a map instead of the location of my worst humiliation. David flew out for the first week to help me settle in. We found a decent one-bedroom in Capitol Hill, close to the office, walking distance to coffee shops and bookstores, and all the infrastructure of building a new life. You nervous? David asked as we assembled my bed frame on move-in day. About the job? Yeah. About being here? No. This feels right. Good. And hey, I'm only a 30-minute drive away if you need anything. Family dinners every Sunday if you want them. Sarah's already planning to feed you constantly. Tell her I accept. She'll be thrilled. We finished building furniture, ordered pizza, sat on my empty living room floor eating from the box. Have you heard anything from Claire? David asked casually. Nope. And I won't. She's blocked on everything. Patricia said the lease situation is finalized, so there's no reason for us to have any contact. You ever tempted to check her Instagram? See what she's up to? Sometimes. But then I remember, it doesn't matter. Whatever she's doing, whoever she's with, whatever narrative she's spinning, it's not my life anymore. I don't need to know. David nodded. That's healthy. Weirdly healthy, actually. Trauma made me healthy. Who knew? We laughed, and it felt good. Easy. Like maybe I was finally reaching the other side of this. The job was intense in the best way. New industry, fintech instead of traditional finance. New team, new challenges that required my full attention and left no mental space for dwelling on canceled weddings or betrayals. I worked late most nights, grabbed dinner at different restaurants, explored the city on weekends, made new friends gradually. People at work, people at a climbing gym I joined, people I met through Seattle's active meetup culture. None of them knew about Claire. I was just Marcus, the new guy from Virginia, into coding and coffee and hiking when the weather allowed it. It was refreshing being unknown, having no history to explain or overcome. 2 months in, I went on my first date since Claire. Her name was Rachel. Rachel was a UX designer at a different tech company. We met at a networking event. One of those awkward after-work mixers with name tags and weak wine and forced conversations. She'd complimented my approach to a technical problem I'd mentioned. I'd asked about her work, and somehow we ended up talking for 2 hours in the corner while everyone else networked properly. "So you're relatively new to Seattle?" she asked over coffee the following Saturday. 3 months. Still figuring it out. And before that, Virginia. Just needed a change. She studied me for a moment. Long enough that I wondered if she could sense the weight of what I wasn't saying. But she just smiled. Fair enough. Seattle's good for fresh starts. We talked about work, about the city, about books we'd read, and places we wanted to travel. Normal first date conversation. Easy and light, and completely devoid of drama. When we said goodbye, she touched my arm and said, "I had a really nice time. I'd like to do this again." Me too. Walking back to my apartment, I felt something unexpected. Hope. Not the desperate, clinging hope of someone trying to replace what they'd lost. Just quiet optimism that maybe I could do this again. Could be interested in someone. Could build something new without the shadow of Claire turning everything dark. I went on 3 more dates with Rachel. They were all pleasant. She was smart, funny, easy to talk to. But by date 4, I realized I wasn't ready. Not because I was still hung up on Claire. I genuinely wasn't. But because I was still learning how to trust my own judgment again. I'd been so wrong about Claire. So completely deceived. How did I know I wasn't missing red flags again? How did I know my instincts were reliable? I told Rachel this, as honestly as I could, over drinks at a bar in Ballard. "I think you're great," I said. "But I'm not in a place where I can do this properly. And you deserve someone who is." She was quiet for a moment, swirling her wine. "Can I ask what happened?" "You don't have to tell me, but I'm getting a sense there's a story here." I hesitated. Then, my wedding was canceled in February. I found out my fiancé had been cheating on me. It's complicated. Jesus. I'm sorry. It's okay. I'm okay. I'm just still figuring out how to be a person who dates after being a person who was engaged. Rachel nodded slowly. "I get that. Thank you for being honest. And for what it's worth, the fact that you're this self-aware is a good sign. You'll be ready when you're ready." We parted as friends. I felt relief more than disappointment. Summer in Seattle was everything people had promised. Long days, surprisingly little rain, the city coming alive with festivals and markets, and people who'd been hibernating through the gray months. I fell into routines: Sunday dinners with David and Sarah, Thursday climbing gym sessions, Saturday morning runs around Green Lake. Built a life that was mine, simple and quiet and uncomplicated. In late July, I got a LinkedIn message from someone named Emily Richardson. The name was vaguely familiar, but I couldn't place it. "Hi Marcus. We met briefly at Claire's engagement party a few years ago. I'm friends with her cousin. I hope this isn't too weird to reach out, but I wanted you to know that a lot of people in Claire's extended circle know what really happened. The truth has a way of getting out. I'm sorry for what you went through, and I hope you're doing well." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I typed, "Thank you for reaching out. I'm doing well. I hope you are too." Short, polite, not inviting further conversation, but acknowledging the kindness. She responded immediately, "I'm glad. And just so you know, Claire's engagement to Derek ended last month. Apparently, he found out she'd been messaging her personal trainer. Some people never change." I closed LinkedIn without responding. Not because I was upset or gloating or felt any particular way about it, but because it was exactly what I'd predicted, and I didn't need confirmation that my instincts about Claire had been correct. Some people really don't change. They just find new people to disappoint. In August, my parents came to visit. It was their first time seeing my Seattle life, the apartment, the city, the person I'd become in the 6 months since everything fell apart. My mother hugged me at the airport and held on longer than necessary. "You look good," she said, pulling back to study my face. "Really good. Healthy." "I am healthy, Mom. Your father and I were worried. When you left, you looked so hollowed out." I was hollowed out, but I'm filling back up. Over dinner that night at a restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay, my father asked the question I'd been waiting for. "Have you heard anything from her?" "No, and I won't. We have no reason to be in contact." "Good." My father's voice was firm. "She doesn't deserve to know how you're doing." "Actually," I said, "I disagree. She deserves to know exactly how I'm doing. She deserves to know that I'm thriving without her. That her betrayal didn't destroy me. It freed me." My mother reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Oh, sweetheart. You really have healed, haven't you?" "I'm working on it. Every day? But yeah, I think I have." That night, lying in bed in my apartment, I thought about healing. What it meant. What it looked like. It wasn't dramatic. Wasn't a moment of sudden clarity or cathartic release. It was just accumulation. Days stacking on top of days where the first thought in the morning wasn't about Claire. Where I could walk past a coffee shop without remembering a date we'd had there. Where I could see a couple getting engaged in a park and feel happy for them instead of bitter about what I'd lost. Healing was boring, actually. Just living. Just building. Just moving forward because that's what you do when you wake up and the world is still there. In September, I ran into someone from my old life at a tech conference in San Francisco. His name was Tom. We'd worked together briefly in Virginia, overlapped for about 6 months before I left. He'd been at the wedding that wasn't, had been one of the guests turned away by my parents. Marcus Chun. He approached me during a coffee break, grinning. "I thought that was you. How are you, man?" "Good. Really good. You?" "Can't complain. Heard you moved to Seattle. Working at Cascade Financial now." "Yeah, about 5 months in. It's great." We made small talk about work, about the conference, about mutual acquaintances. Then, inevitably, "So what happened? With the wedding?" Everyone was so confused that day. "We showed up and your parents were just telling people to go home, that it was canceled." Nobody knew what to do. I'd prepared for this question. Had practiced variations of the answer. Found out some information about Claire the night before that made it clear we shouldn't get married. Made the call to cancel. Moved on. Tom waited for more. When it didn't come, that's it. That's all you're going to say. That's all anyone needs to know. "But Claire was posting all this stuff about you abandoning her, about not showing up." "Yeah, she did. She's allowed to tell whatever story makes her feel better. I'm allowed to not participate in that story." Tom studied me. "You've changed. You used to be more, I don't know, open. Now you're all mysterious and distant." I smiled. "Not mysterious. Just private. There's a difference." "Fair enough." He paused. For what it's worth, I never really believed Claire's version. Seemed too clean. Too victim-y. I figured there was more to it. There was. But it doesn't matter anymore. Does it really not matter? Or is that just what you tell people? I thought about it. Really thought about it. "It really doesn't matter," I said finally. "Claire's choices, her current life, whatever narrative she's selling, none of it affects me anymore. I've built something new. Something better. And the person I was, the one who would have married her, he's gone. I'm someone else now." Tom nodded slowly. "That's actually pretty profound. Or it's just trauma masquerading as wisdom," I said lightly. "Hard to tell sometimes." We exchanged contact info, promised to grab drinks if we were ever in the same city. As I walked away, I felt something shift, a final releasing of something I hadn't realized I was still holding. The person I'd been before 11:47 p.m. on February 11th was really, truly gone. And I didn't miss him. October brought rain and falling leaves, and the kind of cozy Seattle autumn that makes you understand why people tolerate 9 months of gray. I was at a bookstore in Fremont on a Saturday afternoon, browsing the essays section, when I heard a voice I recognized. "Marcus." I turned. A woman stood there, early 30s, familiar face, but I couldn't immediately place it. "I'm sorry, do I?" "Amanda." I was one of Claire's bridesmaids. We met a bunch of times. Engagement party, wedding planning stuff? "Oh, Amanda." The one whose clumsy fingers had added me to that group chat. The one whose mistake had given me the truth I needed. "Hi," I said neutrally. Can I talk to you for a second? I know this is random, running into you here, but I've been wanting to reach out for months and I didn't know how." I considered telling her I had somewhere to be. Considered walking away without engaging. but something in her expression, genuine distress, not performative guilt, made me nod. Okay. We moved to the cafe section of the bookstore, ordered coffee, sat across from each other in uncomfortable silence until she finally spoke. I owe you an apology. A real one. For which part? All of it. For being in that group chat. For laughing at those messages. For not saying anything when she talked about you that way. For enabling her. For being a terrible person. I sipped my coffee. Okay. I know it's way too late. I know nothing I say makes any difference. But after everything fell apart, after you disappeared, and Claire went into victim mode, and everyone was choosing sides, I started seeing her clearly for the first time. Seeing how she operated. The manipulation. The lies. The way she'd rewrite reality to suit whatever story she wanted to tell. And it only took my canceled wedding for you to notice? Amanda flinched. That's fair. That's completely fair. I was a bad friend to you, and I barely knew you, but I should have been better anyway. I was a bad person. Why are you telling me this? Because I need you to know that some of us understood what happened. That not everyone bought Claire's version. And because she hesitated. Because Derek came to me a few months ago, after their engagement ended, asked if I knew anything about Claire's past behavior, if there were things she'd hidden from him. And I told him everything. Showed him screenshots from that group chat. Told him about Jake, about other guys I knew about, but never said anything about. I figured I couldn't undo what I'd done to you, but I could at least prevent her from doing it to someone else. I set down my coffee. That must have been a fun conversation. He threw up. Literally threw up when he realized what he'd gotten engaged to. They broke up the next day. We sat in silence for a moment. The bookstore hummed around us. People browsing, buying, living their uncomplicated Saturday lives. Thank you for telling me, I said finally. But Amanda, I don't need your apology. What happened. I've moved on. You should too. Have you really moved on? Or do you just say that? I really have. Claire isn't a person I think about anymore. She's just a lesson I learned about trusting my instincts. Amanda nodded slowly. You know what's funny? Claire asks about you sometimes. Where you are, what you're doing, if you ever mention her. I think it drives her crazy that you just disappeared. That you never fought back, never engaged, just vanished. Good. Yeah, good. Because that's exactly what I intended. She doesn't get my anger or my closure or my anything. She gets nothing. Amanda smiled sadly. That's the most brutal thing you could have done to her. Claire needs attention, positive or negative, doesn't matter. You gave her absolute silence. It's killing her. That's not my problem. No, it's really not. We finished our coffee. Exchanged polite goodbyes. As Amanda was leaving, she turned back. For what it's worth, I think you dodged a bullet. And I think you're going to be really happy. You already seem lighter than I ever saw you when you were with her. I am lighter, I agreed. Turns out betrayal has a weight to it. Even when you don't know it's happening. Once you put it down, everything gets easier. Winter came to Seattle with characteristic gloom. Weeks of gray skies and persistent drizzle that would have depressed me a year ago, but now just felt cozy. Hygge, the Scandinavians called it. The art of finding comfort in darkness. I spent Thanksgiving with David and Sarah and their friends. Christmas with my parents, who flew out for a week and marveled at how Seattle suited me. New Year's Eve alone in my apartment with takeout and a movie, perfectly content. On January 31st. Just shy of a year after the canceled wedding, I got a friend request on LinkedIn from Claire. I stared at it for a long time. She'd updated her profile. New job, marketing manager at a startup. New profile picture, professional headshot. Smiling, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. New headline, storyteller brand strategist Phoenix Rising. Phoenix Rising. From the ashes of our canceled wedding, presumably. I could accept the request. Could see what she wanted. Could open that door just a crack. Or I could do what I'd been doing for a year. Nothing. I deleted the request without accepting or declining. Just removed the notification entirely. Let it vanish into the digital void, along with every other trace of her I'd systematically erased from my life. Then I opened my journal, the leather one from my grandmother, now nearly full, and wrote. Today Claire tried to reach out. I didn't respond. Not because I'm still angry or hurt or holding a grudge, but because I genuinely have nothing to say to her. She's not a person I miss or think about or need closure from. She's just someone I used to know. A year ago, I would have thought that was sad. Now I think it's the healthiest thing I've ever done. I am not the person who loved her anymore. I am not the person who would have married her. I am not the person who would have forgiven her or given her another chance or believed her explanations that I am someone completely different. Someone who trusts himself. Someone who knows his worth. Someone who understands that love without respect is just another word for tolerance. And I don't tolerate disrespect anymore. Not from anyone. Especially not from someone who proved they never deserved me in the first place. I closed the journal and looked around my apartment. At the life I'd built. The city I'd chosen. The future that was mine and mine alone. And I realized I was happy. Not the desperate, anxious happiness of someone trying to prove they're over something. Just content. Peaceful. Whole. The night before my wedding, my fiancée had accidentally shown me exactly who she was. And I'd had the clarity to believe her. That clarity had saved my life. Not dramatically. No one had been in physical danger. But it had saved the life I was supposed to live. The one where I stayed with someone who didn't respect me. Where I spent years making excuses for behavior that was inexcusable. Where I slowly eroded into someone who accepted being called pathetic by the person who was supposed to love him most. That version of my life had died at 11:47 p.m. on February 11th. This version, the one I was living now, was so much better. I am someone completely different. Someone who trusts himself. Someone who knows his worth. Someone who understands that love without respect is just another word for tolerance. And I don't tolerate disrespect anymore. Not from anyone. Especially not from someone who proved they never deserved me in the first place. I closed the journal and looked around my apartment. At the life I'd built. The city I'd chosen. The future that was mine and mine alone. And I realized I was happy. Not the desperate, anxious happiness of someone trying to prove they're over something. Just content. Peaceful. Whole. The night before my wedding, my fiancée had accidentally shown me exactly who she was. And I'd had the clarity to believe her. That clarity had saved my life. Not dramatically. No one had been in physical danger. But it had saved the life I was supposed to live. The one where I stayed with someone who didn't respect me. Where I spent years making excuses for behavior that was inexcusable. Where I slowly eroded into someone who accepted being called pathetic by the person who was supposed to love him most. That version of my life had died at 11:47 p.m. on February 11th. This version, the one I was living now, was so much better. Amanda nodded slowly. That's incredibly healthy. Or incredibly repressed. Hard to tell. She laughed. I don't think it's repressed. I think it's genuine peace. Maybe. Yeah, maybe it is. I left the wedding early, not because I was upset or triggered, but because I'd gotten what I came for. Confirmation that I was fine. That I could exist in a space adjacent to my trauma without being consumed by it. Driving back to Seattle, I felt something close to gratitude. Not for Claire. Not for the betrayal. But for the person I'd become because of it. Stronger. Clearer. More aware of my worth. Someone who didn't tolerate disrespect. Someone who trusted himself. Someone who knew that love wasn't supposed to hurt. For years after the canceled wedding, I wrote this story. Not for social media. Not for publication. Not for revenge or vindication or any kind of public consumption. Just for me. To process. To remember. To honor the journey. Because sometimes you need to write the story to understand what it means. To see the patterns. To recognize how far you've come. For years ago, I thought my life was ending. Turns out it was just beginning. The real beginning. The one where I was the author, not just a character in someone else's narrative. I saved the document in 3 places, just like I'd done with that first night's documentation. Then I closed my laptop and looked out at Puget Sound, at the ferries crossing the water, at the mountains in the distance, at the life I'd built from the rubble of the one that had collapsed. And I smiled. Because the night before my wedding, my fiancé had accidentally added me to a group chat. And I'd read in silence. And then I'd walked away. And built something beautiful. Not despite the betrayal. But because of it.